I'm Sean Cott. I'm from Durban University of Technology, and where I live in the library. But I'm also part of the Data Working Group. The other members of the Data Working Group include DUT's IT Support Services Department, Sagren Woodley, who is the chair, and he can't be here because he's in Australia, and that's why I'm here introducing the rest of the group. There's Nicky Muller from Institutional Planning, Rajan Naicker from MI, Ku Parker from Public Management and Economics, Ashton Maherry from General Education Centre. We also have Sibusiso Zuma, who is a student who's going to share the student experience with us. This section is going to take the format of a panel discussion. First of all, the panelists will introduce themselves and explain their roles in the project. After that, I'll ask them a few questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Nicky.
Hello.
Could you tell us about your role in the project and the overview of the project, please?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Sean, and good afternoon, everyone. As an intentional consideration of the university was to ensure that the Sibusiso project assisted in breaking down silos and really intentionally creating departments and faculties and divisions working together. So my role in the project was actually on behalf of the project leader, who is the DEC Teaching and Learning, was to assist her in driving the project. And the reason why I say it was an intentional consideration of the university is because I don't report to that office at all. I report to somewhere else. So it was, as I say, a very intentional decision of the university to create these, this approach of getting different entities working together in a deliberate fashion. Is that all that I had to answer to at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's perfect, thank you.
Thanks.
Rajan, could you tell us about your role in the project and give us an overview of Objective 1 and its key success indicators?
Thank you, Sean. Good day, colleagues. And I think my role in the project was to improve access to and the usability of data that was sitting with the Management Information Department. The first part was that I was involved was to review the data governance and security issues with existing data that's sitting on the MI repository. The second objective of mine was to publish the existing data that we have in the MI repository onto SharePoint. And the final objective on my side, on the Objective 1, was develop a data catalog. And so we worked on that as well. Do I need
right.
to...
You were also responsible for Objective 3.
Yes. Okay. We look at Objective 3, and I think that it was more a technical kind of objective, and we looked at data infrastructure, the data integration, and the data warehousing. So initially we had the data working group, and which meets quite regularly, and we found that it was useful and it worked quite successful at DUT in the implementation of the data warehouse. So the responsibility of the data warehouse group was to identify the data warehousing and the BI stack. And majority of the institutional data resides on our ITS system, and we identified Power Header from IDSC, which provides integrated data warehouse solutions, and also providing very friendly web reporting and decision supporting modeling. So after we've done quite a bit of exercise in the data working group and trying to identify the service provider, we've had quite a bit of workshops and meetings. We had a meeting with TUT and a lot of vendors, and finally we've identified IDSC to provide Power Header as a solution for DUT. The implementation is completed. It's been done in 29 days. It started off in April and we finished off in June. We currently completed administrator training. We're going to have more training on the administrator and user training. And we've also have quite a few dashboards that are available on Power Heater, and we're expecting to generate more shortly. Thank you, Sean.
Sean, sorry, can I quickly come in?
Sure.
I just realised you asked me to introduce my role, but equally I think I was supposed to introduce the project.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Overview,
And suddenly, as Rajan was talking, I thought possibly this doesn't make much sense, given that I haven't indicated what the project was about. So if we could just take a step back. The Kresge Foundation offered the Siapa Malala partners the opportunity to bid for a bonus grant, which would either scale up or develop further particular project aims. Now, at DUT, part of our project aim was really to consider our entire data infrastructure. We were in a situation of very disparate sources and streams of data that resided in very disparate spaces. There was limited access to student data in particular, and certainly not easy access to that data, usually having to be mediated through various offices to obtain the data. And then we also had a consideration about the capacity of our staff to work with data in a meaningful way towards student success. So essentially the purpose of our project was to build a data-informed culture at the university through developing institutional capacity to access, work with, and understand data towards student success, and that this would be supported by an appropriate and integrated data infrastructure, which includes a student tracking system. So we wanted to look at, we had 4 objectives essentially, and so when Rajan is talking about objective 1 and objective 3, that relates to those particular objectives. And so I think as Ku and Ashton come in and talk about their particular objectives, they'll introduce those a little bit further. Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks, Nicky. Yeah. Ku, could you tell us about your role in the project and give us an overview of Objective 2 and its key success indicators?
Okay, yes, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Ku Parker, and I'm the institutional researcher for the Sibusiso Malala project. I wear another hat in another life, and that was I lectured economics for the Department of Public Management and Economics in the Faculty of Management Sciences, and hence Sean introduced me as from that department. So, but currently I'm working on the Sibusiso Malala project. So the second objective of our data project was to improve the capacity to use data, and there were 8 indicators. Which can be grouped roughly because we had various activities, in terms of those 8 indicators, but they can be grouped according to 3 specific areas. And these areas were, first of all, to identify and train key staff in the use of data, as Nicky actually mentioned, that the concern was the capacity of staff to actually use data, so training was a big part of it. Then, obviously, building communities of practice. So once the training happens, then to encourage and inculcate, this ethos and this culture of actually working with data and using data to inform our practices and our decision making. So the second area then was building communities of practice and using the data. And then thirdly, which Rajan actually spoke to, was developing business intelligence tools. And of course, aligned with that would be training, because you would need to understand, what those tools are saying and how to use those tools. So we really like and thanks Ashton for the roadmap analogy, which I think it's really cool, it works. Overall, in terms of our objective 2, 4 activities have been achieved. 1 activity has moved to objective 4, and that's what you can see is that short left turn. I'm just looking at the screen in front of me. And that's the short left, because 1 objective did move to objective 4, from 1 activity from objective 2 to objective 4. And then in terms of what we've achieved actually 4 objectives. 3 are ongoing, and that's then the work in progress that's continuing. So in terms of what we've actually achieved, we have a big part of it was appointing people to work with data, and we call them the Data Jedi, which I think we've mentioned before at previous conferences. The 6 Data Jedi for the 6 academic faculties, and then of course the Sibusiso Malala Data Training Officer, Ashton, which then increases the core to 7 people who are very skilled in data analytics. We've conducted several training workshops as part of that first group of training. And this has included things like basic and intermediate Excel. So we had to take it down to basic level. We said, what does staff need? What conducted a needs analysis? What do we have to do? And if it meant us starting at basic level, this is a spreadsheet, this is a cell, this is how you navigate. We did it that way. So we've conducted workshops, training workshops in Excel. It's also included how to access the SharePoint, the staff portal, and that's what Rajan spoke about in Objective 1, because there's historical data on the SharePoint. How to bulk upload marks to ITS, which is our integrated tertiary software system where all the marks and data is captured. Also included Auto-Scholar workshops, which is the tracking system, which Ashton will talk more about, and that's the one that's actually moved to Objective 4. Ongoing activities, I would say that's the work in progress. It's the building communities of practice. I think we role model this community of practice very, very strongly through our student success task team workshops. These are very data-driven and very hands-on. We limit presentations to a minimum. We just introduce the data, tell people what to expect, and then we give them the data, and they sit and they actually work with data and look at the implications of what that data is actually saying. Our Data Jedi team is also developing into a very productive community of practice. We have run training for the newly appointed academic staff who are completing the induction program with our Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. And so in this way, we're hoping further to inculcate this ethos of actually working with data and using data. And then in terms of the business intelligence, which is kind of the third group that falls under training, as Rajan did mention, Power Heater has come on board. We're so excited about this. We have had one introductory training workshop that was mainly for administrators. And then, of course, as this develops, we will then, Ashton mainly will conduct training for staff on how to use Power Heater and how to use Auto-Scholar. We will cascade down that training. So it's a long and winding road, but we are slowly making progress, and I think in terms of improving the capacity to use data.
Great. Thanks, Koo. Ashton, please could you tell us about your role and give us an overview of the last Objective 4?
Thanks, Sean. So I'll be talking about Auto-Scholar, which is our software that we use to track students. It does have a machine learning component within it, so there is quite a lot in terms of what it's able to do when it comes to auto-generating advice to staff and students. So we sit in with around 5 levels of users, the top one being your executive, your management, who would want to see a helicopter overview of what is going on within their program and potential areas for improvement and growth. We then have our lecturers and our course conveners, and they'll be able to understand the performance of their courses, potential areas for improvement among students, as well as their own staff development. We then have a section for the academic advisors, where it will give auto-generated advice about the students in terms of their progression in the context of other students within their program, and to allow them to change their performance over time. And we've got the students, where the students will be able to understand their own progression in the context of other students, and their own performance and change over time, as well as track their exit level outcomes and their graduate attributes. And the last part, which is really important, is around the exit level outcomes accreditation. And this has been really one of the strengths of Auto-Scholar with the EXA, the Engineering Council of South Africa accreditation, where they have to use and map the achievements of these exit level outcomes down to the module level. So we were told earlier that we need to be our authentic selves. And for me, this is really the actual roadmap that's happened with Auto-Scholar. In terms of potholes, last year we had an Auto-Scholar 1.0. We now have an Auto-Scholar 2.0. And the main reason is that Power Heater actually came on board. So previously, Auto-Scholar was accessing the ITS database directly, whereas now it's able to use the data that Power Heater is using. And in addition, we've actually achieved more activities since that last slide was generated. Now, I think it's important to note and be honest, that little picture in the lower left-hand corner, the plan is to have the straight and narrow road, whereas in reality, that is not what happens. So Auto-Scholar has come along in leaps and bounds. Where we're sitting at the moment in order to be able to achieve all of the activities is to just add the students. So our systems are in place, and really for me, in my module, the Me, My World module, and if some of you attended the session earlier, where I showed you videos that the students had produced, the students for next semester will be actually working with their information, with the auto-generated advice that is coming through from Autoscholar, with working as me as their one-on-one academic advisor / lecturer / data analyst / quite a few things, to get them to understand what is the information saying about them. Are they able to understand the results and the information which is auto-generated? And are they actually to make a change and to improve their academic performance and their overall student success at DUT? So hopefully I'll be able to present a lot more on how Autoscholar is improving the lives and the success of students by the end of next semester.
Great. Thanks, Ashton. Sibusiso, we haven't heard from you yet, but you are here to provide the student voice. Now, as a student leader, what kind of data do you think DUT should be collecting to promote student success? Do you have suggestions for how this data should be collected?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. It's very unfortunate. It's very fortunate that one is in the position of education and transformation on campus. In terms of how we should be collecting data and how that data should be used in ensuring that students are assisted and they succeed. Yesterday we had a presentation with a challenge of food security, and from everyone seated here or gathered here, we all agree that food security is a problem. So how do we address this thing? I think we have ignored our alumni or our graduates, those who have graduated, in terms of tracking them as to check where they are they employed, what type of employment have they secured, how much they can come back and contribute into our campuses. And also looking at the enrollment forecast as to designing clear programs that will speak to first generation students who come to campus, because you would find that majority of our students would be working students, having the challenges of understanding that in order for you to be accepted or to be admitted in a university, you have to apply the year before so that you will be assessed and be offered space accordingly. So majority of our students are working students, and to understand the enrollment focus would then translate to the ability of the university in ensuring that they create platforms or programs that will speak to addressing issues that those students might face. Because as part of the SRC, we have our SRC subcommittees, which translate to about 50 people who come on campus during immediately after the basic education have released the results for students. Then they would approach campus and assist us in terms of welcoming those students who do not even know a direction to a particular department or something like that. Then the last one would be evaluation forms. The way that those things are issued to us as students is incorrect, because you are asked at the end of the semester or towards the end of the semester in saying evaluate the lecturer who was delivering the content to you. But the problem is that those evaluations should have at least been offered at the beginning of the year with a question to a student, or a piece of paper be given to a student to say, what do you expect from me as a lecturer that will enhance your learning and ensuring that you succeed as a student? In that way, it creates a platform where a lecturer would understand the student's position and be able to align whatever that is prepared as a content for the student to be delivered in that particular program or module. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sibusiso. I hope to come back to you, but let me move on now to Nicky. Nicky, a project like this is complex and multidimensional, especially in an institution where the use of data for student success was limited. Based on your extensive experience, what would you say are the critical elements to a successful project on student success?
And you want me to answer this in how many minutes?
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Can we just move to the slide that has the triangle? So we were just getting back to this one. Thank you. So Sean, I might not answer this exactly directly, but I'll talk around, and hopefully in the process you'll get an answer, and I'll try and do it within 3 minutes. I think This triangle that you see on the screen is a very nice diagram of how to change culture and strategies towards changing culture. I can't say that we use this from the beginning, but along the way we found this particular consideration or framework, which we thought actually was fitting very well into our project. The fact that it is about, given we're talking about data and it's a data project, the infrastructure considerations at the outset, and infrastructure is more than just the data considerations, but everything else that you need to support that project. So alongside that kind of consideration is, have you got, as part of your infrastructure base, have you got executive management support and buy-in into the consideration? Secondly, have you got the right people involved in the project? And I think from our point of view, we certainly had the right people, but perhaps we didn't have all of the right people. And I mentioned that specifically because we did have a single point of failure that hampered both the Autoscholar and the data warehouse considerations to an extent, where we vested a lot of responsibility in one individual who then left, and there'd been insufficient rollout or backup of that particular function in the project. So that would really be a consideration about making sure that you don't have a single point of failure at any point within that, in terms of your resources, your staff, your support systems and things like that. I think also it's important to really have to understand the compelling argument for the kind of project that you're engaged in. So for us, it was the fact that we just really were being so hampered by the lack of the whole data landscape at DUT, both in terms of infrastructure, ease of access and availability of and to the data, and then equally our capacity to work competently with that. And so I think one of the things that really helped our project, if I can just refer to that quickly, is that we really managed to make significant inputs and gain traction when we started with our data working group, which was established through Sibusiso, in regular meetings of accountability. So we called it our cadence of accountability. And when we got that going, I think that's when we really started seeing the traction taking place in the project, and particularly around the data warehouse. I think, Rajan referred to, what was it, 29 days? 29 days in terms of really the actual work of the data warehouse. Obviously, there was a lot of preparatory work, and you'll know because you helped develop and draft the business case that had to go to executive management, and that took time. So those kind of internal processes took time, but by being so incredibly focused, we managed to really get this done in a relatively short period of time.
Thanks, Nicky.
Oh, sorry, and before you go, because there is something else on the screen which has just reminded me. So we're talking about our overall, other than getting these things in place and building the capacity, I think one of our real hopes was that we would see a change in our culture around using data towards policy improvements, process improvements, planning and consideration. So I think that's something that we have seen, and I think Professor Andrew this afternoon might refer to that a little bit. But one of the things that we are doing as a means of kind of evidencing this culture and strengthening the culture is having a DUT data day. So we've called it D cubed, and this is a consideration of we've invited individuals, departments, divisions from across the university to come and have an exposition of how they're using data, and what interesting things are coming out of that are helping to inform process improvements, to inform student success, to inform policy improvements and that kind of thing. So that's just one of the ways in which we're hoping to galvanize this growing culture of evidence-led decision-making. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Nicky. Rajan, now that DUT has gone through a rigorous process of identifying and implementing a data warehouse solution, is there any advice that you would give to an institution that wants to develop a data warehouse of its own?
Thanks, Sean. I think looking at implementing a data warehouse solution at any institution is quite complex, and I think it's quite expensive as well. So I think if the institutions basically have the IT capacity and infrastructure in their own institutions, then it's well and good for the institution to develop in-house. But unfortunately, in our case, we lacked the IT capacity and the infrastructure. So we found that the best solution that we could find, and after meeting with various vendors, and we met with TUT as well, and we've discovered that PowerHeader provided the best solution for DUT. And there's already a community of practice in place. There's 21 out of 26 institutions at that time before we joined PowerHeader that's already on PowerHeader. So at this point in time, we have 22 institutions on PowerHeader, and I would recommend, if anyone that lacks the capacity in IT, I would recommend PowerHeader. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rajan. Ku, the idea of a data Jedi is intriguing. Please tell us more about the Jedi, and also what plans are in place to ensure that the data skills of the Jedi are kept up to date and skills transferred to new Jedi.
Thank you. Okay, I think those of us who are familiar with the Star Trek movies thing would have heard of the concept of the Jedi. These were these incredible, multi-talented beings, and we sort of borrowed that terminology in our context, and so we have these data Jedi. So with the data Jedi, the intention was to actually appoint a person who would be that expert go-to person within a department, and who would then assist with data analysis within that department. So we started off, because the overall Sibusiso project was focused on student success, in order to student data, academic data, our widely important goal was linked to student progress and throughput rates. We began with appointing data Jedi to represent each of the 6 faculties, which we accomplished in a very short time, yeah. And then the intention then was to expand this cohort of data Jedi to include other divisions. As Nicky had mentioned, an underlying goal was to break down silos and to get departments working together and to use data. So our intention was to actually expand that cohort of data beyond the academic ambit. We succeeded in this to an extent in that we managed to appoint Ashton, who wears many, many hats, because he was a lecturer in Gen Ed as well. So he was our Gen Ed data Jedi, but then of course he was also our Sibusiso data training officer. We still have not appointed a data Jedi per se in terms of representing maybe other divisions, but I mean, you're a data person, and the library, for example, has come on board in many ways. So I think from that point of view, we're getting a lot of involvement of different people. So we currently then have 7 data Jedi, and they have skills in Excel, which is just really the minimum. Some also have skills in SPSS and in Vivo and a few other packages. Their work includes very detailed analysis of all the SASE, BUSI, CLASI data, survey data, as well as assistance with other faculty data work that the deans, may actually require, or even other staff members may actually require. Apart from regular monthly meetings, which we have with Data Jedi, and again, in terms of the data working group, that's something we actually emphasize, very regular meetings. The Data Jedi present at the quarterly Student Success Task Team workshops. It has formed a very cohesive, very strong community of practice. And additionally, the Data Jedi have been invited to report at the EXCOs, which is the faculty executive committees where the heads of departments and the deans sit. So in that way, they're inculcating this thing of using data. And we also finally observed that in some faculties, the Data Jedi are actually called upon to assist in other data work above and beyond Sibusiso work. As new data analysis tools come on board through AutoScholar and through PowerHeader, then of course we will upskill the Data Jedi accordingly. Finally, regarding the skills transfer, whether it's to a newly appointed Jedi or whether it's to other staff, I think as the communities of practice approach, which we're actually adopting and emphasizing, as that expands and progresses organically, this will then happen in terms of skills transfer, is what we hope.
Thanks, Ku. Due to my poor timekeeping, we're running out of time. So I've got one last question for Sibusiso. DUT collects all of this data and has an obligation to act on it. As a student leader, what interventions should DUT put in place to ensure student success? How can DUT work with its students to ensure that the interventions are successful and supported by students? You have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we might agree that we have all identified that the problem is linking academic departments with supporting services and obviously those who are staying at rest in the housing department. So a clear synergy between the three components must be identified in order to avoid subjecting students to opportunity cost. We are saying this in a sense that students would be expected, first-year students would be expected to attend orientation. And if housing is hosting its orientation midweek, concurrently with lecturers going on our campuses, then we are subjecting students to a situation where we are saying students must decide and make a choice of whether to attend a tutorial, or an orientation program, or to go and attend classes. So in ensuring that we do not subject our students into opportunity cost constraints, we must then ensure that there is clear synergy between academic departments, student services, and housing. And also, with the issue of tutorials, in the CELT department, there must be also a synergy between CELT and academic departments, in ensuring that, even with housing, in ensuring that tutorials are not only allocated in the evening, where students who would obviously gain or benefit from those tutorials are students who are in rest, but also students who are staying at home could be able to take advantage of the opportunity of attending tutorials and be able to be helped and assisted in ensuring that they succeed as well.
Well, thank you very much, and sorry for running over time. Thank you to our panel. Could you please give them a round of applause?